Welcome to the Plank Partners Candid Conversations, where we delve into the ins and outs of mentorship by speaking with industry leaders and someone whose career they helped guide. Find out how the mentoring relationship impacted them personally and professionally, its troubles and triumphs, and how they can apply their learning and insight to your own success. I'm Sunny Franks Miller of the Plank Center's Emerging Leaders Committee, and I'm joined today by Dale Bornstein. Dale is the CEO of MBooth, a global communications agency with a people-first culture and a passion for creativity. She is also CEO of the Booth Group, which includes sister agency MBooth Health, all part of the N15 network. Joining Dale is Suzanne Forte, Public Relations Director for Comcast Central Division. Suzanne leads innovative communication strategies to enhance her employer's brand visibility and media engagement. In our candid conversation today, we'll hear from Dale and Suzanne about their mentor relationship and talking about how they can be bolder in their work and identifying our why. Stay with us for some great insights into mentorship and advice for emerging leaders as we begin our discussion. Welcome, Dale and Suzanne. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Sunny. Thanks for having us. Hi, Suzanne. Great to see you.
So great to see you again.
Awesome. Well, to kick us off, I'm going to start, instead of starting with the mentor, I'm going to go straight to Suzanne for a question. Suzanne, can you talk a little bit about how you developed your relationship with Dale, and what was it about her that convinced you that Dale would be a good mentor for you? Because it's not, it's a two-way street. It's not just about a mentor deciding to invest time in a mentee. It's a mutual selection process.
Sunny, I love this question, but I'm going to answer it by saying Dale is not a good mentor for me. She is the perfect mentor for me. But like with any great story, I have to start and share how it all started. And so I applied for a mentorship program through the Diversity Action Alliance. It's their mentoring to accelerate progress and success. And so it's a free mentorship program that's really geared for communications professionals of color to help as they are navigating the world of leadership. And so my very first iteration, because I'm on my second iteration, and I will say it's for all levels of comms. So from entry level to mid-level to senior level, if you're interested in mentorship, I highly recommend this program. So I applied for the program and I was matched with Dale. And so I received this email saying, congratulations, you've been matched with Dale Bornstein. She leads MBooth. I did a little bit of research and I was immediately impressed. I was floored that someone at her level and her tenure would have the time to meet with me regularly and give me guidance. But our relationship got stronger and stronger and stronger because of the way that she listened to me, the way that she showed up, and then also the tools that she gave me. And I recall vividly, Dell would always check in by email. And so one time she's just checking in. She's like, hey, Suzanne, like, how are you? I want to know what's going on with that issue that we discussed. And so I'm like, hey, Dell, I can't, talk this evening because we usually would, meet virtually in the evenings. I said, hey, I have some time in the morning. Will that work for you? She said, absolutely. Did a call on my way to work, gave her a great update, and she gave me a pep talk into the office. And so I share that example because it shows how dedicated she was to this mentorship. She allowed me to be super candid. She gave me feedback. She gave me great tools. And so she's a perfect example of how the mentorship wasn't just good, it was perfect for me.
Wow, Suzanne, thank you so much for all those kind words.
I love that. And I love that anecdote about calling you on your way to the office to like hype you up, like a little pep talk, like people always say like, oh, what do you listen to in the car ride in to get really hype? And you listen to Dale Bornstein.
That's it.
But I also love that you called out the Diversity Action Alliance because for those familiar with the Plank Center, we do partner significantly with the Diversity Action Alliance, and they do really important work. So a great call out. I'm thrilled that led to this lovely relationship. Dale, turning the question over to you. What is it that that stands out to you about Suzanne? Obviously, you two were assigned to each other, but you continue showing up for a relationship like this, right? It could have fizzled and it hasn't. It's only gotten stronger. So, what are the qualities in Suzanne that you look for in a mentee?
Well, Sunny, first of all, I grew up always thinking that mentor relationships, were built organically, right? You sort of migrated to someone that you thought you could learn from, et cetera. So I often come to some of the constructed, where we're assigned with a little bit of skepticism, right? But quite candidly, personally and at M Booth and the Booth Group, we're really committed to the Diversity Action Alliance work and really to the mission of really making sure that our industry is much more diverse and rich and that much more inclusive, right? So I felt this was a really important opportunity for me to also learn, right? To learn, because as a white leader, in my own personal intentional DEI journey, if you will, I have stepped in it many times. And so I was looking for someone who honestly was all in, someone who I could see was a dedicated, committed professional, someone who I always say brings their hearts and their smarts. And Suzanne, from the day I met her, you could just tell that she was like a human being first, then a professional. And frankly, we had a lot of chats, and we'll talk a little about this, but as working moms, we had a lot going on, right? Right, Suzanne? And I was just all immediately struck by her openness, honestly, her vulnerability, her self-awareness, her receptivity. I mean, people come into mentorship, constructs, relationships, and sometimes they really don't want advice. They really don't want to listen. And more importantly, selfishly, I was looking for a reverse mentor. And in Suzanne, I actually found the perfect reverse mentor. She is sitting in a highly complex sector industry, a great organization. I've never been in-house. I was learning every day what it looked like to be part of the communications staff and organization at Comcast. And at the same time, I was really fulfilled in thinking that, for I hate to say how many years or decades I've been in this business, that some of my own, experiences, learnings, where I skinned my knees, I could pass that, if you will, wisdom or advice onto Suzanne and just bring new perspective and help her because, in Suzanne, I just saw someone with so much potential. So much potential, and she does. I mean, you said our mentorship was. It's not was, it is, Suzanne. It is, right? We are bonded forever.
Yes, it still is. Capital IS. Yes.
Dale, I love that you specifically called out like vulnerability and self-awareness, because even in your answer, the fact that you were seeking out a mentee to help you shows a lot of your own vulnerability and self-awareness. And I think that that's such an important trait on both sides of a relationship like this. Um, Suzanne, we've kind of acknowledged the fact that like Dale's a big deal. What is like, was that stressful or like intimidating at all coming into this relationship? I know a lot of mentees, especially when you're assigned, you weren't necessarily like, it's like you know them going in. It can be a little intimidating. Did you face a little bit of, I don't know, imposter syndrome as a mentee?
Not with Dale. I think I was immediately starstruck with Dale because, of course, I want to be in her shoes one day. I want to lead. I see myself as a PR or communications leader. I think Dale helped me with that word or that phrase, imposter syndrome. And so she was ideal in helping me to think strategically about certain situations, about being bold, about having a voice, about leading a team. And so initially in our relationship, definitely starstruck because of her stature, her tenure, some of the programs and campaigns that she's led. It's interesting. I was asking her about multicultural because a lot of my work is in that space, in campaigns and looking at agencies. And the best way to go about it. And she knew she has a colleague that was interested in working with us. And so I wouldn't say I was intimidated. I was definitely in awe and admiration. But I took advantage of every a tip and tool advice that she gave me. But back to your question in the beginning about relationship building, I think it's important, to Dale's point, that you lead in. If you are really seeking a mentor, to be thoughtful about it, to have some intentionality, but at the end of the day, also listen to the mentor that you've been assigned to. So get over the intimidation, the imposter syndrome, maybe being a little bit, the fangirl, and then lean into what your mentor is telling you.
I love that.
Sunny, if I could just jump in, I have to say the notion that anyone would be my fangirl or think that I'm a big deal, just blows my mind, because at the end of the day, I think what is so great about our relationship is we are just two folks who happen to work in the communications business. We have different backgrounds. We've walked in different experiences. We're trying to learn from one another, right? And we have so many, though, also commonalities. And I think, you made it also, honestly, a safe space for me to show up as my authentic self, right? And I think immediately we just really understood that we were here to help one another and to really problem solve, right? Problem solve about what it was that we were trying to navigate, both professionally and personally, because our business, gone are the days where you separate professional and personal, and you have to show up as your whole holistic self. And, a lot of times that's also being a working mom and the guilt that goes with that. Or when I would call you and say, hey, I can't talk this morning, I've got 5 minutes, but you'd be like, no problem, I'll get you on the flip side, right? And so we did it whenever we could, but when we did it, whether it was 15 minutes or an hour, I always felt it was really meaningful and valuable. And we both really dug into stuff that, felt really important, really important.
I agree. I think whenever we had the opportunity to connect, I always got something out of it. It wasn't the amount of time that we spent. It was really whatever we were discussing, and the fact that that we were there for each other.
Yeah.
Dale has mentioned the fact that you're both mothers now a couple times. Is that something that you talk about specifically, or is it more is that a topic, being a mother, and while balancing a high-powered career in our field, is that a specific topic? It sounds like it definitely is kind of woven throughout a lot of the conversations and certainly throughout your scheduling, but I think that it shows a lot of vulnerability to be able to talk about your personal life and how that plays into your career. But obviously, we all give so much of ourselves to our careers, and your personal life is going to play a role. So what have those conversations looked like for you two?
It's really about leaning in. So one of the two gems, there's so many gems, but the first one that Dale really encouraged me to embrace is just being me. From my voice, how I want to sound, what I want to say, what I want to dress, and leaning into that. The second piece that I love, that I try to use every day, is this reframing, this notion of looking things differently, finding the positive. And so your question about being a mom, that's me, that's who I am. Outside of work, I'm dedicating so much time, and a lot of my life experiences are around how I mentor and how I mother my son. And so I don't turn that off when I get to work. And so Dale helped me to reframe. Sometimes it's the busyness. How do I reframe, and how do I use that to the advantage in the role that I'm in, or if a campaign, or who I'm advising, or the team that I'm leading, but also, how do I turn it into a gift? And so, to your question, yes, a lot of our conversations centered around being a mother and how that impacts you professionally and your day to day, and also your trajectory, but also as a leader. And so we talked about so many different things, and that's why the word perfect is cliche, but it fits in this scenario because Dale mentioned about our different backgrounds. Even that, I got to share some very vulnerable experiences with her, disappointments, And I always felt seen and heard, and all of that is important as you bring yourself to the workplace. And if you want to show up, you know, if you want to show up the right way, it's important that you lean on someone that's has already been there before.
Yeah. And I mean, Sunny, to your point, I'm a big believer that being a working parent, mother, father, or, even a pet parent, whatever it is. I mean, these are also gifts, right? You learn so much from those responsibilities and how you're juggling it. And I guess, the reason I think it first came up, honestly, Suzanne, right, was because we were scheduling and you might have had to pick up your son from baseball or something like that. And I could tell in your voice, you were there was a little trepidation to sort of say, hey, I can't do it then because I got to go get my son. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, that's your first priority. Like, that's your first priority. And you should never resent your career because you can't be the person you want to be. And you will be a much better professional if you can be a much better mother or brother or sister or wife or whatever it is, right? And so, I just think that the world today and the workplace today and post the pandemic and the whole hybrid workplace, there's a lot more flexibility. There's a lot more figuring it out as we go, right? And I grew up in a much more traditional brick and mortar, in the office kind of thing. It was much more visible when you had to say, I have to go. And there was a lot of guilt around it. I mean, we've come a long way, I think, just as professionals, but I just, if there's one thing I really have a mission around and a North Star, it's like to help people get rid of these gremlins. Like I once had an executive coach who said, like, literally take that gremlin off your shoulder because you don't need any more things on your shoulder, right? Like liberate yourself because you're an excellent professional, Suzanne. And I always found that as we were discussing the challenges, right? Like I didn't understand all the politics and you were so patient, right? To try to explain what was going on, who was doing what to whom. I mean, it's pretty complex, right? And yet, once we sort of figured it out, we were navigating together. I mean, we really collaborated. Like, I think our relationship is a true collaboration. And I, once heard a very smart thought leader say that, often the reason that actually scholars work in pairs is because it's not that one opinion or the other, it's the third opinion. So when you work in collaboration, you like give and take, it's that third opinion that makes all the difference. And I think a lot of our work together got to a really good like third opinion, right? I mean, and that makes a difference.
I love the concept of a third opinion. And I think that one of the things that's so valuable about relationships like what you two have is even if you don't necessarily come to a different conclusion than you would have on your own, the act of speaking it through with a trusted advisor, even just saying the words aloud can help you process and, become more aware of your own thoughts, feelings, and then to have someone that you trust either echo back a decision you may have already come to or help you come to a new one is just so valuable. So I love the idea of that third opinion that can only be reached, informed by two people together. That's really cool. One thing that I think is also a bit of a theme again is self-awareness. And Suzanne, I've heard Dale say already, you're very self-aware, but self-awareness can only take you so far. And there is that added value in having another person, offer their input to get you to that third opinion. Um, can you share a specific time that maybe Dale pushed you or gave you an insight that was particularly helpful when you were navigating a challenge in your career?
Yeah.
We
Suzanne, you are
lost you,
very
Suzanne.
quiet.
We lost you.
Can
No,
you
we
hear
Yeah.
me now?
lost you.
Okay.
Okay, we can hear you now. Talk some more.
What about now?
Okay,
Testing?
it's better. So let's just start. I'll just ask that question again, a little bit for the edit, and then you can go into your answer.
Okay.
Okay. So, Suzanne, can you tell us about a time when there was a particular challenge in your career, um, where Dale was able to give you advice that maybe pushed you a little bit or really helped you navigate that challenge?
I can think of a few examples, but there was an interim role that was offered to me And I wasn't quite sure if I should take it. While it was in the comms function, it wasn't specifically something that I saw myself doing. But it was an opportunity for more visibility, relationship building, and then also it was offered by people that I admired. And so I didn't want to turn them down, but I wasn't quite sure if I wanted the role. And so after discussing it with Dale, she walked me through, she listened to my pros, my cons, and just really encouraged me to be bold. And she told me, you need to do this, do this. And so I'm happy to share that I recently completed it. It helped me tremendously as far as defining my voice, leading meetings, being okay with defining my leadership style. And I owe that to Dale because she really coached me through it. I don't think if we didn't have these conversations, I probably would have turned the opportunity down because I wouldn't have somebody to help me to strategically think through it. And so I'm tremendously grateful for the relationship that we have and just having the opportunity to discuss several challenges, issues, thoughts, ideas with Dale.
Well, Suzanne, that makes my heart so filled to know that it's been, the kind of experience that we hoped it would be, right? And that you're taking away something very valuable. But again, I think what was so interesting about how we got to the conclusion, right, was also, and it goes back to again who you are, right? You were very clear on what you do, right, and what your super skills are, if you were, and what might not be the right fit or what was out of your comfort zone, right? And we really weighed it because you want to actually take enough risk in your career, right? So that you can learn from either the wins or the, failures, if you will, but like you learn, right? When it doesn't go exactly right. But sometimes you just don't want to be too far out of your comfort zone, right? That you don't even have a chance at success. And I think, when we were talking about it, because I'm not in the thick of it. And I think that's the benefit of a really good mentor is like, we're your coach. We're out of the drama. We're out of the weeds. We're out of like the emotional pieces, or we're just out of it, if you will, right? But we're in it enough to sort of give you objective counsel and try to, read the tea leaves in a way that, you become the right person at the right time for the right role. And it's a real stretch, right? And when you stretch, I think all good things come when you stretch, right? And as long as the workplace environment is one that's supportive of that. So, I give you a lot of kudos because it wasn't easy, and good for you, right? And I'm sure like you feel like, oh, I hope you feel a lot of accomplishment, and I hope you're giving yourself a big old atta girl for doing that, right? Like pat yourself on the back, right?
Yeah. See,
Because there's always
that's
something you'll take away from it, right? There's always something.
yes.
It's very sweet. Not to pivot too far away from this, but Dale, we've heard from you before. You've talked about your why, to prove that good people can do great business and that humanity can drive performance. And I know that as an industry, we have definitely, as communications professionals, done a lot of work in recent years to prove that communications professionals are not just about communicating business decisions that are being made by other people in the room. It's a communications professional's role is really to help drive strategy on the front end and be a counselor. Which is funny because as a mentor, you certainly are also getting to do a lot of that, as we just heard.
Mhm.
So, Suzanne, as Dale is mentoring you and providing guidance, have you two talked about your why before?
Every conversation was approached with a why. Dale is an expert at getting down to the intentionality, finding the purpose in it. As she shared, we both our bond was formed over purpose and the work that we're doing, and finding the intentionality behind it. But for me, seeking out this mentorship and leadership, why do I want to be a leader? What assets do I bring? How can I be better at leading a team? And Dell helped me to think through all of those different situations and scenarios.
Awesome. And I think something that's so valuable, like we spoke about earlier with that third option, that third voice, is having someone that you can share your thoughts with even before they're fully coherent, and having someone to help guide that conversation. So the fact that Dale is constantly bringing up the why, to help kind of be the structure behind all of these important conversations is so valuable, and something that I think a lot of the time can get lost as we, are thinking about things in our own day-to-day lives. We're so deep in the weeds. It's like it's hard to think about the why when you're just trying to get through the what. And so I think that that's something that mentorship also provides a lot of value in.
No,
So, okay.
sorry, Sunny. No, I was going to say that um, I also think that it's not just, about the why, right? But it's also about the how, and for me, I have always loved the saying in the book, how you do everything means anything, because there's a lot of what, and we can master the what, but really understanding how to show up, what your personal North Stars are, what your values are, leaning into those, living that, right? That all drives obviously the why and the purpose, but it also, is about your personal brand. And I think the how plays a really big part in earning trust, right? And earning the kind of followership and the kind of accessibility, if you will, approachability, right, that now allows you to build the kind of relationships, both in your organizations or with mentors and mentees. And I think that, you asked me in the beginning, like, what was so amazing about Suzanne, and I think she hopefully got the vibe for me too. I mean, this was like a safe space. This was a no judgment space. We were not coming at this where I was here on the almighty to tell her everything I've learned and, this is how you do it. That doesn't work. Like, we have our own house, right? And you have to adapt it. But it was more about, like, really, as we said, listening to each other, creating this safe space, no judgment, assuming, good intent, giving grace, whether I was stepping in it, whether, you had a different perspective, right, Suzanne? And that's so, so, so important, because that's how you build and I think earn trust. And when you align your actions and your words, right, you really continue to build trust. And all we have is our personal brand. Like, at the end of the day, how we show up is all we have in our careers, in my humble opinion. It's all we can control, right?
Yeah. And I think that one thing that is so special about the relationship that you two are doing such a great job of, painting a picture of today is that Suzanne has felt comfortable enough in herself to push back on you at times. And that's something that you obviously want and welcome. But I think that's something that a lot of people would, potentially struggle with, especially knowing that she was maybe a little bit starstruck going in. Um, Finding that comfort where
She
you
never
are
said
able
that,
to
Sonny. Sorry, she never said that. I would have probably laughed, right, Suzanne? If I would have.
I think that's an important concept, because especially earlier on in your career, you may see the CEO, you might see the vice president, you let these titles form this barrier between you and someone else. And so you let being starstruck by someone's titles or accomplishments prevent you from forming a relationship or asking a question or being yourself. And if there's one thing that I would like someone to take from this, is to approach those relationships authentically. I think it is healthy to have admiration, to admire someone, to marvel at their work. But I love how Dale was approachable, and encouraged, was just very open. But I would love for anyone who's watching this today not to be starstruck, to really show up, to try to form those relationships at any level of the organization.
Yeah. And that leads
Well,
me to, oh, go ahead, Dale. Do you have anything to
no,
add?
I mean, I was just gonna say that, my own point of view on being a senior leader, or quote, being a CEO, or being whatever title you want to give it, janitor, for whatever it is, right? Is that certainly, like, your role at a certain stage in your career is actually be, I think, the executive producer, right? The spotlight's not on you anymore. It's on you putting the spotlight on those that you're casting in all these different roles so that they can shine, right? And I think that that's true of when you get into a mentor relationship or mentee relationship, and when it's a reverse relationship too, right? Because you played that same role to help me shine in things that I was dealing with in my organization, how I showed up, right? Because I could benefit from, you sharing how you walk in your shoes, right? Which is very different than the shoes that I walk in. So, I just think this notion of really parking your egos at the door and really understanding that our job is really at a certain stage in our career, right, to be able to help others really take the stage and play the role that they've been cast in to, I guess, a lot of applause and an award-winning, what would you say, stage play or audience, right? A welcoming audience, whatever take the metaphor forward, right?
And on that note, a very large part of our audience is students and emerging professionals. So, think 5 years in or fewer to their careers. And looking back on that time, maybe try and put yourself back in that place, in that headspace. Maybe 3 to 5 years into your career, what are the things that you wish you could tell yourself? What kept you up at night, maybe needlessly, maybe you were right to be concerned about it and you've grown from that. What kind of advice would you have for someone who's either just entering their career or in the early stages? Suzanne, you'll go first.
So I have a few, but I'll start off with one. What used to keep me up at night or in meetings early in my career, I'd have all these great ideas, I'd write them down, but I would never say them. And so I would go, maybe afterwards and sort of pitch my boss, and they would always look at me and say, "Well, how come you didn't speak up?" And so where I'm at now, it's highly encouraged. Great ideas come from every and any level of the organization. And so I would encourage that person, younger Suzanne, to speak up, to be bold, share the idea. If it doesn't land, it doesn't land. It's not the end of the world, but speak up. Another one I would say is to build your brand earlier. In PR, public relations, communications, we're always building the brand. We're celebrating. We're championing, all these brands, clients, and products. But oftentimes, you don't promote your own personal brand. You come last. And so, I think doing your own self promotion, looking at yourself, like where do you want to be, building your brand is super important early in your career. It'll help you to get where you want to go further. And then the last one, and I've seen this in every iteration, every job that I've had, is to prepare for the job that you want when you're in your current role, because those opportunities will pop up and you will not even know, you won't be aware. And if you're trying to prepare or you're trying to apply for that position when it opens up, it's too late. It's way too late. And so come in there, do your best, go above and beyond, be strategic, have a point of view. You're building your brand. So when that opportunity pops up, they're already thinking about Suzanne. And so those are my 3 tips. Those are what I would share to my younger self.
Yeah. And Suzanne, I couldn't agree more. I always say leadership at every level, right? Best ideas don't come from the top. They come usually from the middle and the bottom, right? So I'm with you there 100%. I remember hearing in Harvard Business School professor years ago talk about, hire for attitude, teach for skill. So, always show up with a great attitude, right? Be curious, be hungry, bring in energy, right? Be the one people want on their quote to-do list, right? You ever hear the expression, the most important things your not to-do list, right? The people you don't want to see because they suck the life out of you, the things you don't want to do. You want to be on everybody's to-do list, right? And I just think when you're in your younger career, I remember for me, I would have told my younger self, get perspective. I know that's hard because you don't yet have perspective, but it's get perspective. Don't be scared. Have more confidence that, you actually know more than you probably do. Because again, we learn a lot on the job, but like common sense, resourcefulness, having that drive, understanding how to, access information from others and then, build relationships who can help you along the way, learn from others, learn everything, right? Learn every day, stay relevant, right? Always on top of tools. And the one thing that you said that I just wanted to add to is that I agree, making sure that you're advocating for yourself, right? So that people have you on their quote, to-do list or their radar, right, for the next opportunity. But I also would tell young people, and I see this a lot, don't rush your career. I mean, your career these days is going to be a long one. I mean, many, many years, right, with longevity and everything. And we may have how many jobs do they say we're going to have, or different careers, right, or reinvention and reimagination. And at every moment in that career, make sure you're mastering the skills, because once you're promoted or once you're put in that next opportunity, you can't go back. And so, somebody who's great at that moment can actually become pretty mediocre if they've rushed their career because they think, I'm due a promotion, I'm due this and that. Like, master your skills, get the foundation behind you, and then you can fly, and then you can soar, and then you can be recognized, on merit and what you bring to the table.
And Dale, you have obviously led many people and many teams over the course of your career. And I think that probably plays a pretty significant role in your approach as a mentor. How has that, from that leadership perspective, how does that inform some of the advice that you give to Suzanne?
Well, I think that sometimes we've talked about how we need to be kinder to ourselves, right? We need to give ourselves more grace. We aren't perfect and we shouldn't be driving for perfection. That can often be paralyzing. We should be driving for excellence. We should be trying to show up as the best Dale or Suzanne we can be, right? And if we're doing that every day, then we should give ourselves check. Atta girl, you're doing great. And I think that sometimes we tend to all focus on what we didn't do well that day. And actually, I've been struck this year by Harvard Business Review came out with it's not the gratitude journal, it's the success journal, where every day you just really focus on 3 wins, big or small, because we tend to always look at what we didn't do well that day. So let's reframe this. Let's create positive energy for ourselves and create more joy in our lives. I mean, there's a lot that's all, in the world around us, that can sort of enervate us. And I think that, when we came into our conversations, it was really about how do we find ways to be more kinder to ourselves, right? And still succeed. And I think that's the key.
I want to start just by thanking Dale publicly. Thank you for all the time, the mentorship, the friendship, the wisdom. It's been incredible just to have someone like you to talk to. So I want to say thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Well, ditto, ditto, ditto. And, I would just say to folks, get involved in things outside your day job, whatever sort of fills you up, your passions, but get involved outside your day job, because I think you become a richer, as we talked about, professional partner, whatever it is. And I think for me, being able to hopefully, help someone like Suzanne benefit from where I did skin my knees or scrape my knees, makes me feel really valued and really valuable. And I think we all need to feel that in our careers, because some days are harder than others. So, and some days are great, and I would just also say that the last thing I'd say is that I think sometimes we forget to have fun. I think we can take this all a little too seriously. And I would say that every day we should laugh, like find reasons to laugh, find the joy in something that you're doing that day. And remember to have fun along the way, because a career goes by very quickly. And you want to make sure that that you've taken some adventures, that you've had some fun, that you've done some interesting things, right? And that you've skinned your knees so you can pass the wisdom on to others, right? That's for me anyway, one of the greatest joys. So I want to thank actually Sunny for having both me and Suzanne. And I want to thank Suzanne for really enriching my career these days, because our relationship has taught me a lot, and what's the right word? I'm just really grateful and thankful to have you in my life. So thank you, Suzanne.
Wow, I feel so lucky to be a part of this mutual admiration society that you two have going. It's really, really special. And to your point, Dale, I've had a lot of fun with both of you. So thank you both. Dale and Suzanne, I have loved hearing how your mentoring relationship developed and the strengths that both of you provided, including, as we've mentioned multiple times, that vulnerability, as well as a willingness to ask the hard questions and be willing to work through them together to find that third opinion. Even when that meant a flexible schedule or grabbing time when you could amongst your busy lives to help one another. It's truly inspiring to hear your story, but even more so to know that a mentoring relationship can't be set up by just matching two people up. It's something that you try and see if it works, and if we're also lucky, it will work just as well as it has for you two. From the mutual admiration you both share, it's so clear that it's working really, really well. So thank you so much for opening up your calendars and sharing about your relationship and what's worked so well for both of you. So thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for the work you're doing at the Planck Center to continue to make mentorship such an important part of our industry. We really appreciate that too. So thanks.
Awesome. And for those of you watching, there are more candid conversations from the Planck Center for Leadership and Public Relations on our website. Please let us know how you enjoyed today and join us for insights and discussions with our leaders in the public relations industry in the future.